it drives me a little bit crazy. Like if someone falls off on the ring and they just wander out the ring, and then a groom comes in and collects the horse, drives me insane. Hopefully you don't do that. Otherwise, I've just insulted you.
No. Agreed. Otherwise, this podcast is over right now.
Exactly, it's done. We're done.
Under the Saddle.
Well, hello and welcome to another edition of Under the Saddle. I'm Adam Cromarty, and for those watching the video version of this podcast, you can probably tell I'm not at home, I'm not in the studio, I'm in a hotel room in Los Angeles. But I didn't want to wait too long before putting out another episode, so we're set up here and we're going to make it work. And I've got someone fascinating coming up for you today. Someone who's represented her country right up to games level and who's also really harnessed the power of social media with over 60,000 followers on Instagram, over 80,000 followers on TikTok, and some of her videos have had over 1 million views. Quick reminder before we get into the conversation, please make sure if you haven't already done so, hit that subscribe button. You can also follow me on Instagram or TikTok, although I don't do the dances. You can just search for Adam Cromarty, and if you've got any ideas for future guests, you can send me a DM on there. For today though, let's say a big welcome to Gabriela Router. Gabby, it's great to have you on Under the Saddle. And I suppose we've got to start with how it all started for you. How did you get into horses and what was it like growing up?
Hi. So I started riding when I was 4 years old. I started riding in Chile. We had a beach house in Cachagua, that's what it was called. And it was this place where like older polo ponies, when they were retired from polo, they would use them for like lesson horses. So I started riding there. And at first it was just like when we went in vacations, like summer and winter vacations. And then as the years progressed, I decided to ride like in Santiago, which is where like the capital of Chile, which is where my house was and everything. And from there, like things just started like kept on progressing. And then it went from like lessons to like owning my own horse, then to like competing at local shows, then to like going to different shows, and then internationally, and then just kind of kept snowballing.
And then eventually you moved to the US. So what was it that kind of made that decision that you would is that for horses or was it for other reasons or?
Well, I always knew that I wanted to go to university outside of Chile, and I had the horses, and the horse world in Chile is very small, and it just you hit this level where you don't feel like you can get not like any better because you don't have the exposure to competition and course difficulties and just like environment and everything. So I knew that I wanted to do that either in the US and Europe, and I knew I wanted to study either in the US and Europe. And I found my current trainer, which I've been with for 10 years, Chris Kapler, and he's based out of New Jersey for half the year and then Wellington half the year. So I was like, okay, New Jersey, then what college do I like that's close? And that's when I picked NYU. So then I would study in the city in New York City and Manhattan, and then I would ride in New Jersey. So that's when I moved.
And how do you think life would be different if you had stayed down in Chile?
Honestly, for me, that was never an option. Like, I told my mom, okay. I think she'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I was like 8 or something when I said like, I'm gonna go study out, like not in Chile. Like it was never like an option growing up for me to stay. Luckily, I'm like super thankful that my parents can support me and financially and everything to be able to study abroad. But I think because I went to an international school in Chile, like that was always my way, like it was just part of my path. So, but I knew that it was gonna be different for sure, just culturally first of all. It was very different, although I did find like a group of friends that were from South America, Latin America, Spain, like that we kind of get closer culturally. But I knew that like riding, it was going to be completely different and everything, yeah. But I was ready.
And what did you study at college?
I studied economics and business studies, yeah.
Why? What was that like? It sounds very kind of brainy.
Honestly, it's funny because I had this idea of economics in high school, and I think this happened to a lot of my classmates. And it was not the same when I went to university. Like it was a lot. Like I was good at math, but I didn't like it that much. And then it was like all math, and I thought it was gonna be more, like projections and more abstract, which is kind of like more
Mm.
macroeconomics, which I like a lot more. But then the math was kind of a real shock. And then once I was in it, I was like, I have to finish it. But yeah, that was a struggle. But the business studies I loved, like negotiations, I loved, like even like bookkeeping, management, like all of that I was super into. I just wish I had studied that straight on and not gone to economics.
And let's get back to the horses. So let's sort of talk about the team that you've got just now. Tell us about the horses you've got on the circuit.
Right now, I have three horses that are like my career horses, and then on the side, I tend to have one or two sales horses. So my three main horses are Rocky. I've had her for 4 years, and she's the one I've done like all the Nations Cups with. I've traveled. I got the bronze medal on the team for the South American Games. Like, she's my main girl. And then I have two upcoming horses. One's 10. His name is Juice. Well, that's his nickname, Castle OJ.
Mm-hmm.
And we started doing 3 stars now, and he's very strange horse. Like, he's nervous, he's quirky, like he'll like, move his head up and down, and you just kind of have to be calm for him because he's not gonna be calm himself. So I kind of have to like ride like in slow motion sometimes. Like everything I do has to be way more calm and quiet because his brain is like going at a million per hour. But he's really fun to ride, and it's been good. We've developed our partnership for a year now. And then I have Lincoln, who's 9, so he's a little bit on the younger side. And we started doing 2 stars and moving up to 3 stars slowly. And I think he's so talented, and I have a lot of hope, and like, I think he's going to do very well because he's just super, super talented. But I think he needs a lot of like flat work and just like putting his body and pieces together. Because I think he lacks a little bit of the foundation and that's what we've been working on. And I think once he does that, he's just gonna bloom. So I'm just kind of taking my time. But yeah, those are the three main.
And what's the sport like in the US? I mean, obviously. Sorry, I was going to ask, what was the sport like in the US compared to like Chile? And obviously, you've sort of seen the sport over in Europe as well. What's the things that you like about the sport in the US?
First of all, it's a lot more challenging, and there are a lot more people showing. There's a lot better quality of horses and riders, and everything in between, like course designers, like footing, the jumps, like everything is just a higher quality. That's the first thing. And the second thing is like in Chile, at least, like it's all concentrated in Santiago, so all the shows you go to are around that area. You don't really travel, which is nice, but also like I like the fact of like going to different states and like just breath of fresh air, versus like going to the same 3 or 4 clubs that did the showing in Chile. And then just, I think the most important and the biggest change is just the difficulty. Like the courses are more difficult. So in Chile, you can have a course that is, okay, a meter 40, but it rides like a course in the US at a meter 20. Like it can be the specs, but the difficulty of the course is so much more here in the US. So when I moved, I was like jumping a meter 45, and then I was stuck at a meter like 20, meter 30 for 2 years working on my basics and being able to be competitive in that level before moving up, even though I had already shown in big shows in South America at the higher level.
How did that sort of affect you? Were you aware when you came, you were thinking, right, I'm going to have to like drop down a level, or like did that sort of affect you mentally that you had to stay at a lower level for a while?
Yeah, I mean, it was really difficult, honestly, because I moved and I was like ranked first in my category. I had been second in the national championship, like all of the stuff, and then it's like kind of like a blow in the face. Like, you might have been one of the best in Chile, but like forget about it over here. So that was a big shock to be kind of have the realization of be like, okay, like if I want to be at this top level, like I need to get so much better, so much stronger, work on a lot of details, like, and I think that was a struggle mentally, but I think that's one of my strengths too. Like I am very resilient. So for me, that was, I took it more of like a challenge, like, okay, like it's harder than I thought it was going to be, but it's going to be worth it and I'm going to do it.
And did you find Chris before you came to the US, or was it afterwards? Because you've been with him a long time now, and that's
Yeah.
almost unheard of.
Yeah, I know. I'm a little surprised too, but for some reason, every time that I I think, oh, okay, I don't know, like we like have evolved together, like in the relationship, and I feel like I still have so much to learn. Like I don't get stuck. It's not like he's always learning about the sport and all of that, so he kind of, I don't feel like I've hit a level where I'm like, oh, he can't teach me anymore. Like like I've learned everything I can from him. I feel far off from that. So I think that's one of the big reasons why I've been with him for 10 years. But it's actually a funny story about how I found Chris. The first time that I like experienced Wellington was in 2013, and I went to a clinic for like 2 weeks, and then I ended up staying for 2 months. But this was with some other trainer. And then the next year, like I didn't really like that trainer, so the next year I was like, I want to go to Wellington, but I do not want to train with him. Like I want to train with whoever I can find that's the best. So I didn't really know anyone. I didn't know who to ask, who to reach out to. And it was around that time that Reed Kessler was, going to the Olympics, like doing like Olympic trials and all of that. And I had like met her in person, just like took a photo of her being like a fan. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna like reach out to her. She might answer, she might not answer. We'll see. So I think I Facebook messaged her and I was like, hi Reed, like my name is Gabby, like I think I was like 16 at that time or 17. I really want to go train in the US. I do not know who to train with. Like, could you please, like, do you have any advice before I go train with? And the first person that she mentioned was Chris, and she said that he had like the best horse care and that he was amazing. And I was like, okay. And so I researched Chris, and I was like, yeah, sounds good. And then I emailed him, and I was like, hi, I really want to go train with you. Like, these are some of my videos, and blah, blah, blah. And then he was like, okay, yeah, like, here are the rates, because obviously, like, Wellington rates are like years of Chile rates. So thankfully my dad was prepared, and he was like, okay, like let's do this. And then the funniest part is that Chris was like, oh, can I like call you? And I was like, yeah, of course, like to talk. And like we talked, and it was like, hi, like how are you? Like very just like small talk. And I was like, what? And then he was like, at the end, he was like, honestly, I just wanted to see if you actually spoke English. And I was like, yes, I speak English. Like, it's not like US perfect English, but I went to an international school. All my classes were in English. I was like, yes, I do speak English. We'll be able to understand each other. And he was like, okay, I just wanted to make sure before you came all the way here. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
So that was the only kind of barrier to entry. As long as you could speak English, you were in.
Well, I think that, and I think he really
He sent the
made sure
videos
that,
as
like,
well.
yeah, it's like sent videos, and I think he made sure that I was like really dedicated. 'Cause he likes to teach people that are
Yeah, of
super
course.
dedicated, like want to put all efforts in, like not just like get to the barn ride and leave. Like people that actually want to learn and want to learn about horsemanship, horse care, and are interested in the sport, like the whole part of the sport, and not just going in the ring and winning.
I think that's so important. And I try never to, as best as I can, never to compare Europe to the US, because I think it's almost a different sport. Like it's much more commercial here. Like everyone stays with their trainers, like rather than keeping the horses at home. So it's very different. But if I could change one thing over in North America, I think it would be having people that spent more time at the barn, like looked after their own horses. It drives me a little bit crazy, like if someone falls off on the ring and they just wander out the ring and then a groom comes in and collects the horse. Drives me insane. Hopefully
Yeah.
you don't do that. Otherwise, I've just insulted you.
No.
Uh,
Amazing. Otherwise, this podcast is over right now.
exactly. It's done. We're done.
Yeah, and you know what? I agree with you. I think there's a lot more of like the hard work and putting hours in the barn in Europe than there is here in the US. Like people can just get by with just here is like a paycheck and I'll just ride my horse and you can prep it and I'll just go in, win, come out, give it a carrot, and leave, you know, and
Yeah.
I understand that there's people that want to do it that way, but for me, like it's such a sport that you have to put like your heart and soul into it that I don't think for me it's not the correct way. But
No,
yeah.
exactly. And I think you get a better relationship with your horse when you're down there,
Oh,
kind of learning what they're like. Um,
100%. I mean, that's the you're putting all of your trust and your literal life into this
mm,
animal. Like you might as well have them have a connection with you, you know. It just gets so much further. That's why it takes a year or two to like develop a partnership even when you put in the hours off the saddle, you know. So I just think it's so important to spend time with your horses to learn like what they're like, what they like in the barn, what they don't like in the barn, like you know, it's just, that's another thing that I do that I don't think many people do. I actually don't give my horses treats, which is kind of surprising, but I don't want
mm,
to be a walking carrot, you know? Like
okay.
when my horses see me, I want them to like want to be with me because they like the cuddles, they like the attention, they like me being around them, and they don't like immediately start pawing at the ground or just like getting crazy because I have treats. And I stopped giving them treats a few years back, and I think and truly believe that it's helped me and my horse's relationship like develop like over 100%. I will give them like every now and then like an apple or a carrot. I'll put them in their feed, like stuff like that. But I don't go straight. Like I don't say hi and go straight and give them a treat or like every single time that they see me get a treat, you know. And I
Mm.
think that's part of something that's not usual, but that has helped me develop the relationship with my horse so much more.
Where did that idea come from? Because obviously the sort of given is that everyone's got cookies and treats and it's sort of
Yeah.
the done thing. Is that something you came up with on your own? Did you see it somewhere else or?
I didn't see it anywhere, but because I've been doing I like do so much research about horses and how they work and how like based on their anatomy, biology, and all of that, and you know, action, reaction, and how their minds work. And I think one of the examples of a book I read was something like one of the ways that horses learn is by relating things. So when they hear like the grain getting poured, and the next thing they get is their grain, it's like a direct relationship between the sound and them getting grain. So I guess that got into my mind, and I was like, okay, so then if every time I see them, they get a carrot, like they're gonna be expecting a carrot from me, and now I'm not Gabby, the person they have to make a connection with. I'm Gabby, the person that brings the carrots, you know? And I was like, okay, I'm gonna try
Sure.
this. And I don't know, it's been so much better. Like my horses want to come out to like see me and like put their head on my shoulders and like get neck scratches, eye scratches, like versus I see other riders and it's just like the horses sees them and they start pawing, which is such a horrible habit, and neighing and just like
Mm.
banging against the door. Or like the other thing is that by me not being a direct like food giver or treat giver, they like respect my space a lot more, which is a lot safer and a lot more just like I respect their space when they need space. They also need to not like bump into me or like push me, and that tends to happen when they're looking for food.
I suppose a bit of a strange analogy, but it's almost like not being a parent that just hands a kid an iPad. Like their sort of dopamine hit would come from the iPad and the screen, in the same way as a horse's dopamine hit would come
Right.
from the treat. So you're giving them their dopamine by actually spending quality time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
One final
Good
thing before we
summary.
go on to social media, because you have been huge on social media recently, so we do want to chat about that. And what's the highlights of your equestrian career so far? Because I know you've been to like Spruce Meadows, I've seen you there, and obviously you've done some games. And if you had to kind of pick two or three highlights, what would those be?
Mm, I think, well, definitely the South American Games and winning a team bronze medal, that's a big highlight for me. It was my first senior games. I was quite nervous, but also it was the like first games that I've been, because I've been on like young riders, juniors, and all that games, but it's the first games that I felt so prepared. Um, so I loved going to that show. I loved the preparation. I loved how I felt. I loved what I learned from there, and that was just a big highlight. And then I think in regards to just shows and places I've been to, I think, I mean, going to Spruce is a big highlight for me in general. I haven't been in like 4 years, and I'm dying to go, so that'll be my next year plan. And I guess another highlight would just be doing like jumping Nations Cups. I think that that's so much fun, and I hope I get to do a lot more of those in the future.
Great. Well, let's talk about social media and content and stuff, because you've been creating some content and it's got some huge views, and your social media following's been growing as well. And social media in general just keeps changing and evolving and growing. And
Mhm.
last year we did a season of the podcast. It was just audio, and this time I'm doing video because of social media and Instagram, and now of course Threads is starting. First of all, I've got to ask, where are you
Yeah.
sitting? Are you in your kitchen today? For those that are watching.
Yeah, I'm in like my parents' apartment in New York City. I usually come and spend like Mondays here. So I mean, it's not very big, and like the dining table is kind of in the kitchen. So yeah. And it keeps
And
like
do
moving
you
too,
cook a
because it's
lot?
got like springs. I do. I mean, I've been doing this thing called like Hungry Root. This is not a plug at all, but they like bring they send you recipes. I mean, now that I've mentioned them, I should get sponsored by them, honestly. But you get like
Absolutely.
recipes, and you get the ingredients, and you just cook them, and it's really easy, fast, healthy, and I'm vegan, so it just makes it a lot easier.
So what made you decide to start making content? What was the? Had you seen someone, or like how did that evolve?
I think it was just kind of at the time where everybody was like on social media, and I made like my equestrian Instagram. I think it was probably like 7 years ago, maybe 6 years ago. And I mean, at first it was just photos, and then when like Reels and TikTok came up, finally I was like, okay, I'll try this TikTok thing. I don't know how it's gonna go, but we'll see. And I just started posting like random stuff, and then I guess it got really big, and I got a lot of reactions when I started posting like a mix between educational videos about like how horses sleep, how horses travel on airplanes, like stuff that people wonder but don't really know. And then between a mix between that and just like entertaining things that I just would come up with. And then it like grew a lot on TikTok, and then I was like, oh, I might as well. And I had left my Instagram very like professional, just about my showing and my sponsors there. And then I was like, you know what, like if people like this on TikTok, like they'll like it on Instagram. And I just started like moving the content and posting on both platforms, and I've gotten actually a lot more uh like reactions on Instagram, and a lot more just it just seems more consistent, because the people that actually, I feel like in TikTok you get people that a lot of people see it but don't necessarily follow you, versus in Instagram like a lot of the people that see the content like actually follow you and like follow your journey. So yeah, and then I think the biggest thing was for me to, when I started like what I would do basically was that I would come up with a question about my like with myself. I was like, oh, you know what? Like, why do horses get ulcers? And I'd research it, and then I'd be like, if I'm wondering this, someone else has to be wondering it as well. So then I was like, might as well make a video out of it. Like now I got like all these pages open and all my research done, and then I was like, okay, I'll share it, and I got a lot of reactions. And I was like, okay. the other thing is I would talk to a lot of riders, and a lot of riders like just didn't know these things anyways. And I was like, how do you not know this? Like, you're giving your horse GastroGuard, but you don't know why you're giving your horse GastroGuard? Like, what? That makes no sense. And so then I was like, okay, like clearly there's a space for this where we can all learn with no judgment, and yeah, and that's kind of how it's been going.
It's funny, like, I've got a marketing company, so we often work with brands and stuff, and we essentially teach them everything that you have just learned organically about building a community, about bringing like value in their content. But it seems like you haven't like sat down and read like how do I create social media posts. You've just kind of felt and found your way, but you
Yeah.
found like exactly the right answer.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad I'm
Um,
doing something right.
And I think like the science of horses is so interesting, and perhaps it's something that riders feel that they should know but they don't know, so now they're afraid to ask. Because quite often, like in
Exactly.
commentary, I'll talk about like diachromatic vision or like them using like their bicep femoris muscle to push like, but people maybe feel they shouldn't sort of know more. So I think you are kind of sort of filling a gap and ticking a box.
Yeah, and like you're saying, like everybody's afraid to ask, and I would be. I get it. I would be afraid to ask too because I'm like, okay, I definitely should know this, but I don't. So, when I ask, like most of those, you know, backtracking. I think one of the biggest things is because I ask a lot of questions, and
Mm.
I remember that when I came to the U.S., that was like a big comment that I got from like people who like worked with Chris. I was like, they were like, why do you ask all these questions? And I was like, because I don't know, and I was like never afraid to like ask questions. And I think just that has translated into me being like, okay, I'm going to research this and then I might as well make a video out of it.
Has there been a piece of content that has been, viral? Has there been one that really stands out as being most successful?
I think there's a few, but like how horses travel in airplanes, that one's been huge. And I think because like that's a question that I get asked all the time. Like I'm like, what do you do? I meet someone new. It's like, oh, I like travel for horses. They're like, oh, okay. How do you take your horses from like, I don't know, one place to another? I was like, well, or a trailer or a plane. And they're like, wait, what? And then at this point, I'm like, here, let me just send you the link, And I'm just like,
Yeah.
this is how it is. Or like, let me just show you this video. Um, and then
Mm.
the other ones have been like how horses see. I think been a big one, just explaining how their brains work and how like they see the world. And then also like I've done some like inspirational videos that have helped me and I think have helped other people, and those have done really well. And then I did like a twist of the Miley Cyrus song "Flowers." I worked with my sister. She's a singer songwriter, and I actually worked on the lyrics myself, and then I like sent it to her, and she produced it, and she sang it, and that went really viral. That I can buy myself horses, and then the twist to it, which was like the other side, like the negative side of like mugging and all of that, versus like the fancy side. And then I did another twist, which was like POV, like my horse, like pretending like it was my horse singing. And I don't know, I think just things that are between entertainment, educational, like they either make you laugh or they make you think, and those are the things that have done the best for me.
I'm assuming you get lots of like direct messages and stuff now. Do you try and reply to everyone? Is that a challenge?
Yeah, I reply to everyone, or at least unless like something gets missed. But I like get these days where I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna sit down and go through them. Unless they're like creepy messages, I reply to everyone. You do
I was
get
going to
those
ask
once
about
in a
that as
while.
well. Have you had any sort of real like negativity?
I for sure gotten backlash on videos, and like people either being like, oh, like this girl doesn't, oh, she just has money and like she doesn't work for it, or just people being like, oh, that's not like when I give riding tips, then like, oh, that's not how you do it, and it's like I at the what's the most entertaining thing to do? Not say anything and have other people
Hmm.
fight with them, and then you just watch. sit there,
Yeah,
get some popcorn, and watch to see what
it's
happens.
popcorn.
You know, that's the best thing to do. That's what I've
I,
learned. Like when you engage, it's just like not not good, And I think direct messages, I haven't really gotten hate. It's just more sometimes like creepy men, and I'm just like blocked. But I don't really get like negative on direct messages. It's mostly like on the comments of videos and stuff.
I think that puts a lot of people off. I think people who maybe see your content and think maybe I should try it, I think are put off by worrying what people think. And do
Hmm.
you think that's just your personality that you can just kind of ignore that stuff and sort of get on and do your thing?
I think, I mean, I do and I have and I still do a little bit struggle with what people think and like how I look and like, typical stuff that everybody I think goes through to some extent. But at this point with like content that's online, like if the more people like you, the more people hate you. It's like the bigger
Yeah.
following you have, the more hate you're gonna get. And I just learned to ignore it. Like sometimes there's some that I'm like raging to answer and I'll be like, Gabby,
Hmm.
calm down. There's so many more positive comments than negative comments and it's just part of it.
Sometimes I'll write the reply, but just never send it. Like I've
That's
never
a
got
good
any intention of sending it, but I'll still write the reply.
That's a really good idea, but then it'd be a lot of work too for all of them. I have to go through them.
Yeah, exactly.
Really good. Or what I do is
It's
I
mainly when I'm
like,
sitting on a plane.
yeah. Or what I'll do is I'll like screenshot ones and then I'll send them to my friends and be like, oh my God, like, can you believe this? And then like we'll just talk about it then, and then I'll move on.
And how do you
Yeah.
plan your content? Do you like sit down with a calendar, or is it just you come up with a great idea and off you go?
I feel like I should have a calendar and I'm really a planner in general, but with this,
Hmm.
it's hard to plan because there are weeks that I'm free and that I can work more on this and actually do stuff. And then there's weeks that I'm at a horse show where I do not want to be thinking about creating content or being on Instagram. So I just have to find the right balance. And I found what works for me is just when I'm free and I can do it, great. I don't think like, oh, I need to post one video every day or I'm gonna stop getting followers. For me, I can't do that. That's too much work. Like I already do a lot and I don't want to put more on my back. So I kind of just,
Hmm.
the main thing I try to do is to balance out the content between like something funny or entertaining, inspiring versus educational versus like me showing or like a photo here and there, but I don't necessarily like plan because before, like in the pillar for me, it's like being a professional show jumper and then content creating and influencer. So I just keep my priorities straight, and I think not being so focused on when and what I post all the time helps me keep my priorities straight.
For anyone thinking of starting to create content, is it something that they should do to try and make money from? Is there a sort of commercial aspect to creating content?
I've been trying to like get commercial stuff here and there, but I don't like to accept things that I don't actually use or, like myself. So all of my sponsors are sponsors that I've like products that I've worked for a while that I can like fully stand behind. Um, and that I really like. So I feel like a lot of other people will just get messages about, oh, like use this, and they'll just do it without actually testing it. And I just the other part is that I don't like to be like, oh, here is a product in your face, like use this product.
Mm.
Like if it naturally integrates to my lifestyle, my content, and all of that, and what I actually like, great. If it doesn't, then I'm not gonna do it. So I
There's a great
think
analogy for that
monet.
from a marketer called.
Yeah. What is
Sorry, I was
it?
going to say there's just a guy called Gary Vee. I don't know if you've come across him. And he wrote a book called Jab, 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 Left Hook, which is basically about creating content, giving value,
Mhm.
and then eventually you can sell something. But he also uses the analogy of if you just try and go straight in and sell something, it's essentially the same as like a guy in a hotel bar coming up to you and just giving you his room key. Like, there's none of that kind of creating the relationship, creating the bond.
Right.
So I suppose it's a little bit like that.
Yeah, I mean, if that exactly, like if it's something that I like for example, I don't know, with Butte saddles, like I've been riding Butte for 10
Mm.
years. Like when I decided to partner with them, I was like, I have tested all your saddles, your customer service, everything for years. Like I can fully stand
Mm.
that this is the best saddle for my horses, and I am willing to make content for you. But I also won't just be like, buy the saddle. Like, like I'll
Yeah.
explain like
Yeah.
why having a good fitting saddle is good for your horse, and like why I choose Butte, like I'll just make it integrated. And so I think that's why I don't like have that much of like monetizing in that sense. But I'm working on different partnerships and stuff. Like I'm more about building long-term relationships than I am about just like showing a product and then, it's just like not my thing.
And getting a check. No, definitely. Um, Kind of last question about the social stuff. And you're doing an amazing job. Why, on a whole, are equestrians so bad at social media? Because there's people with like Olympic gold medalists that could be earning hundreds of $1,000s a year from doing social content, and occasionally they stick up like a winner's picture, and that's all they do. Why are they so bad?
I just think I don't think it's a priority. I think a lot of equestrians are more old school in that sense, that they just focus on their horses and not like on the social media aspect. Also, like if you think the median, like the average age for example, for a show jumper to reach their peak is about 35 and up. So if you think about that, it's like the next generation, I think, will be a lot more into social media than the current winning generation. Or like, you know,
Mm.
like those. So I think that's a big part of it too. Just like this, like it'll get there. It's just those people that are already there are not, like this is just not a thing that they want to do or see as a priority.
No, I think you're right, 100%. But you are doing an amazing job, so
Thank you.
congratulations for everything you've achieved with it. But also from the horse side as well. I know we've talked mainly about social media, but the horses are going great, and hopefully we'll see you back out soon. We do have some quick fire questions. We're asking the same questions to everybody, so there's 5 questions. Are you ready for these?
Yeah.
Okay, so first one is horse idol. Who's the one horse, living or dead, that you'd love to sit on?
Oh, King Edward, honestly. I would sit on the horse any day. I don't know if I could ride him, but he just looks like so much fun, so springy, so game for anything, and like the partnership that him and Henrik have developed is incredible. And like I
Hmm.
mean that's a partnership that I would strive to have with any of my horses. I just think they have so much fun every time they go in the ring. So definitely that would be a horse that I would love to sit on.
And rider idol. If there's one person that you can maybe spend time with, and we're going to rule out Chris Kapler, so he's not going to get offended by this. So you're not allowed to say Chris. So anyone else other than your trainer, Chris,
Yeah.
who's your rider idol?
Laura Kraut. I mean, she's the number one female rider in the moment. She's just such a warrior, and I think she really is like a sign for like female empowerment in the sport. And she's just been at it and doing so well for so many years. And I just think she has like such a good connection with her horses. And yeah, if I could, I would spend a little time with her and just like getting to know her more and more because I think what she's achieved and what she's done is amazing.
Yeah, Laura's just so consistent as well. For
Mhm.
years she's been consistent.
Exactly, and that's
So
like
yeah, love
so
Laura.
hard. Yeah.
Yeah, oh, definitely. And I think that's what our sport's about. It's just being
Hmm.
consistent. If you're second every single week, you win much more than being first once. So yeah, definitely
Exactly.
consistency.
And
Best
consistent
advice you've
with,
ever been given?
sorry, and consistent with like different horses too. It's not just like one hit wonder, like
That's
one
true.
horse.
Yeah.
Best advice I've ever been given. I think one of the advices that like really changed the way I view the sport was given to me by my sports psychologist. And it was, he said, um, like, don't think, just feel. Like, when you are thinking, you are worried, you are judging yourself, and you're not letting your body just do what it knows what to do. So, like, whenever I think that I'm starting to get nervous or worried, I'll just like be like, okay, stop, think, like, stop thinking, and just feel. Like, what is your breathing? What's your horse's breathing? Like, what do you feel on your toes? Like, what do you feel on the reins? And that just like brings me back and centers me and makes me just ride, and not like think about what I'm doing. And I think that's the biggest thing for me, because sometimes I try to like overthink and just like overdo instead of just like feeling my horse and feeling the moment.
I didn't know you went to sports psychologist. We're going to have to go off on a little tangent here as well. What made you go to a sports psychologist? And do you think you've got like lots of coping mechanisms by doing that? Because again, it's something that's probably not done enough in our sport.
Yeah, for sure. That's another thing that I talk about a lot, is just like mental health and mental like strength in the sport. I think it's a lot better now, but before it was kind of like if you went to a sports psychologist, it was because there's something really wrong with you. Versus I just think everybody should go because it's amazing and it's helped me and my riding so much. I think just I used to get very, very nervous and like panicky and like anxious, and it just happened like when I entered the show ring. And I just started, I went to a couple in Chile, and then I was like, eh. And then I moved to the US, and then my mom found this sports psychologist called Eugenio Lizama. He's in Chile, but he's worked with like big golfers, big motorcycle drivers, and all of that. And I started working with him, I think, 2 years ago. And he's been a really big part of my team. Like, I talk to him every week. He's really upped my mental game, and yeah, he's part of my team. Like, he's just as important as my groom or my trainer.
And I think again it's a bit of a generational thing. I know people like McLean Ward though have said how helpful sports psychologists are. But I think as the generations move on, I think we're going to see them more and more in the sport. How did Chris react? I mean, do you ever say, "Oh, my sports psychologist say this"? Has he ever kind of rolled his eyes or anything, or is he really kind of supportive of that aspect?
No, I think Chris is really good about working on your mental game too. Like, he gave me the book A Goal for His Mind, which is a good book I recommend because golfing is so similar to riding in the mental aspect. Like, you wouldn't think, but it is. And actually, him and my sports psychologist have had meetings before, and they had the last one in person was during WEF this year. And it's just to get everybody on the same page and work towards the same goals, because there's so much that Chris can do in my mental part, that he just, when he thinks I'm struggling with something, and then he'll mention it to me or to Eugenio, and then we'll work on it, and it's just then different people can focus on whatever they are experts in. And it's never been like, like Eugenio said this, so I'm not going to do that to Chris. Like, there's never been a clash.
Right, I'm so bad at these quick fire questions because as soon as you say something interesting, I want to know more. So let's get back to those. So you've done best advice. What's the worst advice you've ever been given?
I tend to forget like bad things people tell me. Like, same thing with gossip. Like, I don't retain these things. Like, even when I fight with someone, like, I just won't retain the whatever. So I can't think of a worst advice, but I have been told before, like, by people that I thought were my friends, that they didn't think I was good enough, or that they didn't think I was at the level or had the ability or the force. And I think that is like not maybe worst advice, but just like worst comments I've gotten. Or like even friends that I thought were friends, like speaking behind my back when I left Chile, and a lot of like envy and jealousy and like just negative stuff around that. And I've just learned to brush it away and just prove them wrong.
And the biggest mistake you've ever made?
I think the biggest mistake I've ever made has been to try to do too much at once. Like when I was like in college, I would try to do everything. Like I would be like go to school, then like okay, go to my classes, then drive to New Jersey, then ride the horses, then drive back, then go to the gym, then go out with my friends. Like I was trying to do so much, and I think it really took a toll on my mental health, and just like my body was exhausted, and I thought I was just trying to do everything. I was trying to experience everything, but at the same time, like I didn't want to let the horses down, didn't want to let Chris down. And I just think I needed to breathe and just be more, like be better with myself. I think that's one thing.
And do you think you've got that good balance now? I mean, this is a day off today. What's your plans?
I mean, I went to Soul Cycle in the morning, so I didn't fully rest my body. But no, I've definitely gotten better about that, and about like resting and just like balancing stuff out. Like I'll try not to be like super focused on writing, because sometimes I can get like too intense, and I'll just make sure that I see some friends and like have a good laugh, and then okay, if I don't go to the gym one day because I'm like my body's literally exhausted, then I'm not gonna kill myself for that, you know, like I'm not gonna put myself down because I didn't go to the gym one day, versus before I was like I need to do everything every day, and they just like drained my energy levels and my mental like energy, you know. So I think I've definitely got it more covered now.
Well, Gabby, you've been fascinating, so thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
And hopefully we'll see you around at some point.
Yeah,
where are you off to next? I'm in LA at the moment.
Nice.
I'm here for another couple of weeks, and then back to Spruce Meadows after that.
Oh, that's so fun! I want to go.
What about you? What's your rest of your summer looking like?
I'm going to Saugerties tomorrow afternoon, and I'm there for a week. Then I'm home for a week. Then I go again to Saugerties for 1 week. It's 2-3 stars. Then I'm back home, and then I do the Hamptons, and then we just kind of have to see where the summer takes us.
I think I'm going to the Hampton Classic, so I shall see you there.
Wait, we can meet in person.
We can. It's the first time I've been to the Hampton Classic. Everyone said how nice it is.
Yeah, it's so expensive, but it's very nice. Like a arm and a leg, but
but it is very nice. So
yeah, we'll have to for sure meet there.
Well, once again, a big thank you there to Gabby. Really fascinating, but also a good reminder to us all that we need to get better at our social medias, don't we? Right, I'll never mention this again until the next episode. If you haven't already done so, it's there. Please do hit that subscribe button. Don't forget you can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Facebook. Just search for Adam Cromarty. And if there's someone that you want to hear from on the podcast, if you've got any ideas, you can drop me a DM on any of those platforms, and I promise I will get back to you. For now, though, a huge thank you to you guys for listening, and we'll see you again next time here on Under the Saddle.